Subordinating conjunction. Conjunction that joins a subordinate clause and an independent clause. Run-on sentence. One that tries to connect two independent clauses without the needed conjunction or punctuation. Comma splice. Occurs when a comma is used to join two independent clauses without a proper conjunction. Brainstorming. Letting thoughts make every connection to the topic possible and then spinning off ideas and making notes of them as they are generated. Bathos. Attempting to evoke pity, sorrow, or nobility that goes overboard and becomes ridiculous, sometimes called anti-climax. Irony. Refers to the difference between what is and what are. Malapropism. Confusing one word with another similar-sounding word. Parallelism. Subjects, objects, verbs, modifiers, phrases, and clues can be structured in sentences to balance one with another through a similar grammatical pattern. Parallelism helps to highlight ideas while showing their relationship and giving style to writing. Euphemism. Cover-up word that avoids the explicit meaning of an offensive term. Hyperbole. An example or phrase that exaggerates for effect. Climax. Process of building up to a dramatic high point. 4 steps of writing. Drafting, revising, editing, and proofreading. Various types of paragraphs. Illustrative, narrative, descriptive, and process. Syntax. Refers to the rules related to how to properly structure sentences and phrases, not the same as grammatical correctness. Simple sentences. Composed of a single independent clause with one subject and one predicate. Compound sentences. Composed of 2 independent clauses joined by a conjunction, correlative conjunction, or a semicolon. Complex sentences. Composed of 1 independent clause with 1 or more dependent clauses joined by a subordinating conjunction. Preposition. Word that links a noun or pronoun to other parts of a sentence. Prepositional phrase. Combination of a preposition and a noun or pronoun. Correlative conjunction. Paired terms used to link clauses. Subordinating conjunction. Relate subordinate clauses to independent ones. Gerund. A verb form used as a noun, most ending. Walking is good exercise. Infinitive. To plus verb. Adjective. A word that modifies a noun or pronoun. Adverb. A word that modifies a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. Inductive reasoning. Process that starts with data using particulars to draw general conclusions. Deductive reasoning. Involves using general facts or premises to come to a specific conclusion. Ad hominem. This type of argument attacks the character or behavior of a person rather than taking a stand on the issue. Hasty generalizations. Condemnations of a group based on the behavior of one person or part. Learning approach. theory of language development that assumes that language is first learned by imitating the speech of adults. Linguistic approach. Championed by Noam Chomsky in the 50s, the theory of language development proposes that the ability to use language is innate. Cognitive approach. Developed in the 1970s and based on the work of Piaget, this theory states that children must develop appropriate cognitive skills before they can acquire language. Sociocognitive approach. 70s, some researchers proposed that language development is a complex interaction of linguistic, social, and cognitive influences. Some valuable critical thinking skills when reading. Summarization, question generation, textual marking. Simile. Like or as comparisons. Metaphor. Direct comparison without using like or as. Personification. Giving human characteristics to a non-human thing or idea. Synecdoche. Use of a part of something to signify the whole. Metonymy. The use of one term that is closely associated with another to mean the other. Literal comprehension. Refers to the skills the readers use to deal with the actual words in a text. Critical comprehension. Involves prior knowledge and an understanding that written material, especially in non-fiction, is the author's version of a subject and not necessarily anybody else's. Metacognition. Thinking about thinking for students involves taking control of their own learning process, self-monitoring progress, evaluating effective learning strategies, etc. What are the ways to categorize metacognition? Awareness, planning, self-monitoring and reflection. Affixes. Syllables attached at the beginning or end of a word to make a derivative or inflection form of the word. Both prefixes and suffixes are affixes. Decoding. The method or strategy used to make sense of printed words and figure how to correctly pronounce them. Stanza. Group of lines. Literacy. Ability to identify, understand, interpret, create, communicate, compute, and use printed and written. Enjambment. Occurs when one line ends and continues on to the next line to complete meaning. Blank verse. Unrun verse. Imperative sentence. Issues a demand. Elegy. A poem that is a mournful lament for the dead. Revising stage. Emphasis is placed on examining sentence structure, word choice, voice, and organization of the piece. Ballad stanza. Alternating lines of tetrameter and trimeter. Sonnet. A verse form consisting of 14 lines with a fixed rhyme scheme. Apostrophe. A figure of speech in which one directly addresses an absent or imaginary person or some abstraction. Allusion. A reference to a well-known person, place, event, literary work, or work of art. Transcendentalism. A philosophy stressing the relationship between human beings and nature, spiritual things over material things, and the importance of the individual conscience. Philosophy focused on protesting the Puritan ethic and materialism. Transcendentalist authors. Ralph Waldo Emerson, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Henry David Thoreau, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Oliver Wendell Holmes. Transcendentalist values. Individualism, freedom, experimentation, spirituality. Realism. This was the new style of literature that focused on the daily lives and adventures of a common person, focusing on characters with whom middle-class readers could easily identify. This style was a response to Romanticism's supernaturalism and overemphasis on emotion. Realist authors: William Dean Howells, Mark Twain, Henry James. Naturalism. The term naturalism describes a type of literature that attempts to apply scientific principles of objectivity and detachment to its study of human beings. Unlike realism, which focuses on literary technique, naturalism implies a philosophical position. Classicism. The principles and styles admired in the classics of Greek and Roman literature, such as objectivity, sensibility, restraint, and formality. Neoclassicism. Romantic. A term describing a character or literary work that reflects the characteristics of Romanticism, the literary movement beginning in the late 18th century that stressed emotion, imagination, and individualism. Examples of authors' works from modern era: Mark Twain, Jack London Whitefang, Call of the Wild, Robert Frost, Nothing God Can Stay, The Road Not Taken, Joyce, T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland. Postmodernism. Having to do with a movement in art, architecture, or literature that is a reaction against modernism and that calls for the reintroduction of traditional elements and techniques as well as elements from pop culture. Context cues. Words and phrases around the unknown word that help a reader deduce the unknown word's meaning. Hubris. The flaw that leads to the downfall of a tragic hero. Rhetoric. Persuasive writing. Fable. A short story or folk tale that contains a moral which may be expressed explicitly at the end as a maxim. Frame tale. A narrative technique in which the main story is composed primarily for the purpose of organizing a set of shorter stories, each of which is a story within a story. Examples include Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, Ovid's Metamorphoses, and Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. Denouement. The outcome or resolution of plot in a story. Anticipation guide. Provides students with an opportunity to respond to and discuss a series of open-ended questions or opinion questions that address various themes, vocabulary, words, and concepts that will appear in an upcoming text. Morphology. The study of the structure of words. Pragmatics. The role of context and the interpretation of meaning. Dialect. A variation of a language used by people who live in a particular geographical area. English. Derived from Anglo-Saxon, which is a dialect of West Germanic with roots from many languages, including Chinese, Hebrew, and Russian. Etymology. The study of the history and origin of words. Abstract nouns. Name an idea, condition, or feeling. Present perfect tense. Used when action began in the past but continues into the present. Example: Annie has attended a charter school for 2 years. Future perfect tense. Used to express action that will begin in the future and will be completed in the future. Example: by this time next year, Tori and Celia will have graduated 8th grade. Participle. Verb that functions as an adjective. Relative pronouns. Relate adjective clauses to the nouns or pronouns they modify. Example: a basketball player who plays with intensity and skill gets a place in the starting lineup. Doublespeak. Language that is intended to be evasive or to conceal. Editing. This stage involves checking for style and conventions, spelling, grammar, usage, and punctuation. Renaissance. a period during which learning and the arts flourished in Europe. Examples: Dante's The Divine Comedy, Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, and Malory's La Morte. English Neoclassical period. Examples: Dryden's The Conquest of Granada and Alexander's Feast, Swift's The Battle of the Books and Gulliver's Travels, and Pope's The Rape of the Lock. Neoclassical period. Examples: Dryden's The Conquest of Granada and Pepys' Memoirs of the Royal Navy. Victorian period. Examples: Dickens' Great Expectations, Tennyson's poems, Hardy's Tess of the D'Urbervilles and Jude the Obscure, and Browning's Sonnets from the Portuguese. Colonial period. Examples: Williams and Hooker's Bay Psalm Book, Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanac, Bradstreet's The 10th Muse lately sprung up in America, and Edwards' The Freedom of the Will. American Renaissance period. Examples: Dickinson's poems Life, Love, and Time and Eternity, Melville's Moby Dick, Whitman's Oh, Captain, My Captain, and Leaves of Grass, and Thoreau's Walden.